Okay, if I could have everybody's attention for this particular video, I think this is the most compelling research that we'll look at this entire semester based on what's going on right now in our society. And the people who, when they put this together, I'm sure didn't recognize where it could possibly go. So, what we're going to look at is the effects of group interaction and what tends to be a group polarization. And if you notice, it seems things seem to be this huge divide in our society, like left versus right. One side's right, one side's wrong, and maybe even you could say globally that these things are going on. I think you could make that argument as well, but it's definitely evident more so than any time in my life. I mean, I didn't live through the '60s, so I don't know kind of what it was like then. But based upon research, I would say that we can confidently say this is a point of great divisiveness in our society. And so there's been a lot of blame go back and forth between, well, what's the cause? And I think this is a very self-evident cause right here. And the cause is basically when you have discussion. So there's research, and you can look in your text on page, if you go to page 282 and 283, you'll see this discussion. And so researchers wanted to examine what are the impacts when people come into conversation and have an argument with one another, and maybe just a debate. Because really, kind of the theory is you would think that if people could get together and have a conversation about two possibly conflicting attitudes, that if they can sit down at the same table and have a conversation about it, common sense would say, well, they might find some common ground and start working together. That's not what the evidence says. The evidence points in the opposite direction. That when we have a conversation, when we talk about it together as a group, as groups talk about it together and have a discussion, at the end of that discussion, we're actually farther apart than we were when we started. And so this is disconcerting, and I want you to kind of take a look at this in a bigger context. And so again, here's another slide that kind of talks about it. So we have a lot of evidence that we're increasing in polarity, both many facets of polarity. We have landslide counties in elections have doubled between 1976 and 2008. So in other words, you may have populations of people living in little areas together. That dominant, prevalent thought process is kind of consuming them, and they're moving in one direction. Kind of like that group intensification effect that we talked about. And also, even in a number of folks like you that are, undergraduates, folks entering college in the middle of the road in 1960 was about, or excuse me, 1983 was about 60%. Most people would consider themselves kind of in the middle of the road, versus only 46% in 2010. I'd suggest that's probably dropped since then, just in 7 years, 6 or 7 years. So why? So let's think about this. Let's look at some more data. Because there's more data that goes along with this. So if you look politically, you look at the United States, we are moving apart. So pay attention to, like, 1994, the average Democrat and average Republican were actually pretty close in their views. There wasn't a lot of room separating them. Even in 2004, after the Iraq War, I mean, look, it's even a little bit closer than it was in '94. So there really wasn't a huge ideological divide, and you see a lot of information that moderate or the Republicans and Democrats could share. But now, when you move to 2017, look how far apart just the median Republican and median Democrat is. They've ideologically have moved to the polar extremes, and they're not close at all. So, you guys are welcome to follow that link down there. It shows a little bit more in more detail. And then so this graph right here exhibits kind of the same thing. And so what it's looking at is average partisan gap in the share taking a conservative position across 10 political values. So you see in '94 there's only about a 15 point gap. 15. 2004 it's slight. It's only two points. But in 2011 you have a 26% gap, now 32, all the way up to 36 now. That's exhibiting this movement away from each other, where there's only 15 points there, and then now there's like 36 point difference. I mean, you can look at this several different ways. And so there's been a lot of talk about, well, this is this political party's fault, or this is this particular, maybe it's that this particular individual's fault. They've moved us. They're divisive, and it's their fault. I postulate that the research says that it's all of our fault. And here's my main statistic that supports that. So if you look at Facebook use in millions of users, and you compare this to the change in attitudes, the increasing divisiveness, the increasing polarization, people getting farther and farther apart. What's happened? Look here. So we've got, this would be 200 million Facebook users. Well, that's about 2008, 2009, where Facebook, crosses that boundary. And then look at the skyrocketing use. I mean, just exponential increase. And then there's over 2 billion Facebook users right now. And if you look at the change, look how closely that mimics. Look how closely that mimics the change in attitudes. It's the same type of curve. It's really obvious when we have discussions. I mean, and think about the arguments you see on Facebook. I mean, they get nasty. I mean, it goes back to even that de-individuation slide where people are separated from who they're talking to. You hide behind your screenshot, your Facebook face image, whatever that's called. I'm sorry, I'm showing my age, so I'm sure everybody's screaming at the screen right now. It's not called that. It's fine, but we hide behind each other, and then we cast all these decisions, and we go with that group intensification, and it drives a wedge between each other. So I know politicians probably do stoke the embers, but we have nobody to blame here but ourselves and in our conversations and how we have our conversations. That explains polarization. Now here's another. I'll take you to a website. It should pull it up here. So this is the number of monthly active Facebook users. So again, most people go on Facebook and they'll use it for a number of reasons. But one of the, raise your hand if you've ever started a political discussion. I mean, I should have the meme of Captain Jack Sparrow running away from a big group of people after him. Have you ever stated your opinion on the internet and you feel like everybody's attacking you? I mean, that's kind of the thing that we're looking at here. I mean, look at this use from 2008 all the way up until 2017. That's the same type of curve. So I don't see that as a coincidence. I don't see that as, I see that as directly indicative of our problem. We don't know how to communicate with each other. And when we do communicate with each other, we polarize each other. So if we want to change something, think about what we need to change. Change how you're interacting with each other. All right, well, you guys can work your way through the rest of this PowerPoint. I just wanted to make sure that those points were brought out.